Mary Beth Labate, the president of the Commission on Independent Colleges and Universities. Thanks so much for joining us here this week on New York Now.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
So I want to talk about two parts of your job and your organization. The first, I think, is great. So you represent these not-for-profit and independent colleges, higher education facilities, and apparently they are doing some help with providing medical supplies statewide. Tell me about that effort, because I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking, because I think we're really proud and pleased with what our schools have done. We got a call pretty early on from the state asking if we had what they call PPEs, masks, gowns, gloves. I immediately put out a call to our schools, and I tell you, Dan, they couldn't have been more eager and more helpful. Many schools had already been working with their local healthcare networks to provide all of their inventory. Our schools in New York City, in particular, started delivering things to the Javits Center almost from the moment that we asked. And I think in total, we've done 40,000 gloves, 10,000 masks. We're printing PPEs with our 3D capacity. We're even looking at potentially being able to fabricate respirators and ventilators. So it's really been an all hands on deck effort, and I'm really pleased with what we've been able to do so far.
That's fascinating. So you said that some of the colleges might actually be able to make this PPE and the ventilators. Do you know what facilities we're talking about, what colleges, and where they wod be around the state?
You know, a lot of schools, particularly your research schools, have 3D capacity. So you have places like Columbia, you have places like Syracuse. They believe they have the capacity to the know-how to make masks through 3D. We've gotten some specs from the state. We've shared those specs. I haven't checked in with them of late as whether they're producing, but last I knew they were going to try to churn out as many as they could. It's really this confluence of our technological prowess and the needs of the state right now.
This is very cool. So you said the state is kind of sending these plans, the specs, as you say, and then the colleges can take their 3D printers or whatever printers they have and kind of plug them in and make these machines in this PPE.
Correct. Certainly not at the scale of a major manufacturing facility, but I think at this where we are right now, every bit helps, and our schools want to be helpful.
Absolutely. So as far as every bit helping, I want to turn to the other side of this conversation, which I think is about revenue. There are so many colleges and universities around the state, especially the ones that you represent, in practically every county of the state. And I'm thinking of cities like Ithaca that has private colleges that it really thrives off of, places like Syracuse. What are we seeing in terms of the economic impact of having these facilities essentially shut down? The employees aren't allowed to work there, and the students aren't there right now, obviously, because they've been sent home.
Right. Well, you know, we are, Dan, as you say, we're major employers throughout the state. We're if you looked at us as an industry, private colleges, we're almost a $90 billion industry. We support 400,000 jobs. And unfortunately, I think it's all too real to communities now just how important we are in the communities and for the economic viability of the communities. Because when we made the decision to send our students home, and our private colleges made that decision a little before it was a mandate of any sort, and it was a really agonizing decision for our schools. We looked at what would be the best interest of the community, the best interest of the health and safety of our students. And it became very obvious very quickly when students were directed to leave and continue their studies remotely, just how important a role we play in local economies. I saw it here. I live in Saratoga. We have Skidmore College. You saw it immediately before the restaurants and before the bookstores and the bars were all closed. You saw that the absence of students, the absence of faculty really made a difference on day-to-day commerce. And I'm sure that's being felt across the state right now.
So what do you do whenever all of this is over? What do you do as private colleges, non-for-profit colleges to recover? I know that tuition is obviously a big revenue for you. You get some aid, I'm assuming, from the state and the federal government, but what do these facilities look toward when they're looking down the line and saying, well, you know, we have to rebuild?
Right. Well, you know, in some ways, Dan, we're like any small business, but we've been through this. We haven't been through anything quite like this. No one has, but our schools have been through challenges, and our schools have been proven themselves to be incredibly resilient. I have no doubt they will continue to be. I think we've made that transition to remote learning for as long as we need to do it. And we hope it won't be, we know it won't be forever. We hope it can be for as short of a period of time as necessary to ensure everyone's health and safety. But I think we are resilient. We'll make whatever moves we need to make to ensure that our students continue to get a quality education. We still have students who are putting down their deposits to come to us next year. We think that the greatest thing people can do is just to move on with their lives and get on with the plans that they have had all along. So I'm confident that we'll be able to rebound. We know we will need help. The federal CARES Act did give colleges and universities and their students some aid. It certainly wasn't as much as we had hoped for, but I think it was a good start to let us, and importantly let our students, cushion some of the blow that we're feeling here.
When you're looking at your response to the pandemic and in the context of sending students home and doing this distance learning, have you heard from any colleges and universities how it's been working out, how students have been responding to this really new way of taking their education to a totally different place than they had to before?
It's not ideal, but boy, I tell you, I've really never seen faculty and students rally like this before. And I think to some extent it's almost creating a closer faculty-student bond, because our faculty is really going out of the way to make certain that students are comfortable with it, that they have the technology they need. I know with my own daughter, who goes out of state, but she has been talking to her professors more now via Skype and whatever other means than I think she ever did when she was in class with them. So in some ways, I think in the end, it'll bring the community closer together. It will, I think, really impress upon students just how, what a cherished thing it is to be able to go to a campus and get that kind of learning. So I think it'll make them even more eager to get back when the time comes.
Well, we'll see how they handle it when they come back in the fall, and then they got to take home the homework. But I think you're right. I think that they will enjoy going back to campus in the fall. We'll leave it there. Mary Beth Labate from the Commission on Independent Colleges and Universities, thank you so much for joining us for New York Now This Week via Skype.
Thank you, Dan, and be well and be safe.